Anakin the First.
So in this video I want to talk about some things that I've come across while navigating the waters of trying to do music stuff, really, because it's not always been one thing for me. I started in bands and then evolved into making beats, combining the two and transitioning then across when I met more people that were like rappers and other producers and beat makers, and I always loved being in the studio. But along the way there's small tweaks and changes in perspective which I feel like have led me down a path where I've eventually found a way to actually make this thing my living. Like, there's little things that you pick up and only experience can really teach it, but I feel like being aware of that is never going to be a problem. And in this video I kind of want to talk about some of those things. They might be bypassed in a lot of the videos I see on YouTube. There's a lot of talk about tips on how to make a sound do something, or tips on staying motivated and things, but this is really like just things to be aware of, and the sooner that the penny can drop, the sooner you might start finding a path. And really it depends what your passion is. If you're a passionate, straight up beat maker, I want to sell beats and that is exactly what I want to do, and that never changes, then that's the path, and there'll be different lessons along that journey than there is for mine. I've always been way more open to the idea of like just using the skills and like learning more about different ways to earn off of music and keep it exciting and collaborate and be easy to work with myself, and just learning how to like manage expectations and find a realistic viewpoint. Like, there's a big difference between selling yourself short and overselling without the credentials to back it up, or without. And the thing is, sometimes you might have the credentials on paper, but they might have been from 5 years ago and you might have been in a slump since. So really, those credentials are cool, but they don't fix the problem. It's very much about consistency and finding a way to manage expectations. I think is such a huge thing in actually staying motivated, rather than, you know, journaling and all these things are great tools for like staying focused for sure, but I think managing expectations is something that will keep you consistent. It kind of turns you into a bit of a robot. I never get too excited, I never get too disappointed with anything, and that's spilled over into real life, which can be socially a problem. But I can live with that because I've managed to find a way to make a living doing something I'm happy doing, and like I haven't had to sacrifice the stuff I enjoy doing as well to do some mundane version. Like, my income streams over the last 4 years have been everything from selling beats via other people's store and giving them a cut even if they didn't make the beat, through music libraries and production music and aiming towards sync, which then just through learning that led me down the path of doing more and more sync work, and eventually doing bespoke sync jobs, which are often much bigger pay, but never stopped doing the library stuff because of the new shiny toy in the sync. Like, kept on with the library music and the production music stuff while doing that, while making beats, and the beats thing never wavered because that grew as everything else was growing, and I connected with Timbaland and Beat Club and got a Kevin Gates placement, got other placements bubbling away, and these are all connections I've made on the back of doing all of these different things, but kind of never having to stop doing the thing that is the core reason that I'm doing it, and that is just enjoying being creative and making music. And like, I believe there's an art to spotting and taking opportunities as much as there is to actually making the music or creating the product or whatever it is. I feel like sometimes the message is very self-restricting that some people put out because their path has maybe took a positive turn earlier than some people's do. It's almost like with the manifestation thing. Like, I'm in the middle with manifestation. Like, I don't get up and manifest like a lot of people get up, they will the earth that this is going to be the day that they change their life, or whatever it is that they're talking about. And I'm more in the mindset of having a realistic sort of viewpoint, but an optimistic outcome, and believing you can go and do it, but understanding that you don't just get that by saying it over and over again. Because I've seen a lot of people say things were going to happen, this is going to be my year, this is going to be this is going to be that, and it wasn't their year, and these things didn't happen. So it takes, I've seen enough of that, and the way my brain works is, I like the idea of like the universe and magical powers taking care of me, and that's great, but you've got to do the work, otherwise you don't want it enough. Because I never think, oh, I've got to go and do the work now. Like, I'm always excited to do the next thing or evolve it, and sometimes it keeps me up and I rack my brains and I stress myself out, but it's stress that's coming from a place of passion, so it's a luxury to be able to do that. But with all that said, I want to go through a few things that I've learned. So one of the main things I think that you need to realise, especially early on, once your music's at a level where it's good, you're getting good feedback, maybe you're getting some local placements, maybe you're even selling a few beats and getting a bit of traction online, and it's all looking good. I feel like the conversation around money comes into play way too early now when it comes to people creating music. When I was young and in bands, like, it was never money driven. and it was never like, it was a totally different world. Now a lot of the kids getting into making music are thinking about making beats and making money, which is great in a sense, but the conversation becomes about money too much, and people don't collaborate because of that, and people don't try things, and people don't work with certain artists because they're not paying me, they won't get it, and blah blah blah. And like, there's a time and a place for that, but I think you've got to always be looking out for reasons why to work for free. And part of staying consistent and disciplined, you should do that anyway. There's times now where I'll do sessions where I'm not getting paid for my time, I'm not getting paid for any sort of work up front. I might do down the line if something happens with the song, because I might like the artist, and like that's nothing that unusual. Like, a lot of people understand that you still gotta like work with up and coming artists to try and break with them and stuff, but it's not always about the artist. It's actually sometimes about the people around the artist and the people who are taking care of the artist, and you don't know where they end up working down the line. A lot of my consistent opportunities have come from people who I worked alongside in a different capacity 6 years ago, whereas now we're working in this new way, but we've already built the relationship somewhat there, but then their role changed, and what they're doing changed, and what I'm doing changed. And as you evolve, as long as you're dealing with people that are really taking it seriously, eventually they might only be managing up and coming artists there, but 6-7 years down the time they might be an A&R at Sony or some big label or something, you know. And you can't call for that, and I think that's just where you've got to try and not be problematic, and where you've got to kind of be likable, and without trying too hard to be likable. It's not even really about being likable, it's about being like workable with, and like adaptive, and learning that skill of how to get your point across without pissing everyone off in the room. And I know there's legends that have famously like been these outrageous characters or whatever, but if you're that person, you probably won't even be watching this video, because those people are like unicorns, they're unique. But a lot of us, after a certain amount of time spent working on music, and like once you start to learn the ropes a bit, you can't unlearn the things you know. So you can only be a raw artist before you're too educated. Once you're too educated on it, like that rawness becomes manufactured, which is fine. Again, I manufacture rawness when I feel like, oh, I want this to feel like dirty or whatever, but a lot of the authentic stuff, that comes when it comes. So once you start just getting educated in how all of this stuff works, I think just become as easy to work with and non-problematic in the early days, so that you can build up a reputation where people want to bring you work, want to get you paid, and want to bring you onto projects because they like working with you, you deliver. That is so much more important than fighting for a good deal on a contract, which is maybe your third ever contract. Like, you've got to think long game, because that's how you end up living off the music anyway. If you have a flash in the pan moment, you might live for a while and then people drop off. And it seems that now it's even more challenging because there's so much competition. Another thing I feel like I've learned is, again, to do with relationships. But as we go along, we make these relationships with other creative people, whether it's a producer or an artist or a visual person or whatever, management and A&Rs, and you build these relationships and you take on these mentors. Because as much as a mentor will seemingly take you under their wing, you're allowing them the right to have an effect over your decision making for your life, basically, which is pretty big. And it's a side of it that I don't think everyone's always thinking about. It's always like, oh, the mentor, but really, like, the same applies to peers and like other producers in your circle who might have opinions on work and might not like something that you've done, or a mentor. Because I've seen these things happen now enough times to think that this is a valuable thing to just bear in mind. I've worked with artists who've got management, who've got mentors, who've got people that they trust for opinion, for critique on their music, and a lot of the times those people have got like no real right to. If you're talking about someone who's undeniably had their moment in the industry, who's undeniably experienced a load of stuff in the industry at a high enough level, then yeah, it does become a bit different, and that's naturally going to tend to take on a bit more value. And even those people who have got the like on paper credentials, done loads of stuff, they sometimes get it wrong too. So you need to learn to recognize when something is stylistically a core value to what you are, or like with your morals, if it's really going against your morals. There's certain things you need to hold on to, and take mentorship and peers' comments with a pinch of salt. Only act on it if it resonates with you enough that you feel like you can back it, like you believe it. The whole game of getting into music is a risk if the goal is to be financially well off. The money is there are ways to make money, there are opportunities there, but such a huge part of it is consistency and just continuing to do it and do it and do it and evolve. And an element of that is listening to yourself and following your gut, and that is also a differentiator on if you cut out to do it or not, and you might learn that along the way and like step off the train. But really, if you stay on the train, eventually you'll find something that will fit your role. That's what I believe. There's no study on that, there's no proof on that, but you cannot have your moment until you're in your 40s, because really all along it was a journey where you were meant to be running a label or whatever. Maybe you grow into a role where you're the perfect A&R because of all the taste you've gathered through the years of experience. Like, you don't really know where you're going to end up, which kind of leads me on to the other thing that I was going to say, which is like a heavy percentage of the things that have been my biggest moments and my biggest like landmark checkpoints through doing this have come from music that I had no expectation of, or when I submitted for a brief and I wasn't confident in it, or from a random beat that I made 6 months before. The biggest one that stands out to me is the one where I nearly didn't upload a video because in my head, I'd rushed it because I had somewhere to be. And I was trying to be consistent. I was like obsessed with churning out these Instagram videos at the time. So I rushed this video and I watched it back and I thought, I feel like I've rushed it, but I've got to go. I'd bounced it, I had it there available. So I just put it on my phone and I posted it and I carried on with my life because I had to. And I just thought, in the name of being consistent, I'm going to post that. Within an hour, Timbaland was DMing me, asking me to send him that video so he could post it on his page, which then led me to another 4,000 followers. And I nearly didn't post it. And that's not the only time that this has happened. Like, I've had beats placed that I was surprised, like I maybe made with a different artist in mind, and then all of a sudden it ends up in these hands. That happened with a song called Grandmother's Grave, that I made the beat literally in maybe 20 minutes, just for the purpose of creating content. And I liked the beat and I was like, oh, this is a cool beat, put it in the folder. And that was that, and then I sent it out amongst packs for months and months. And then that one stuck and it ended up being a Kevin Gates song, a single even. And it just comes out of the blue. I've submitted for big sync briefs and I've kind of been laughing in the room with other writers involved, and we've sort of thought we may as well have a go. We kind of put no stock into it, we just had a go at this brief, and that ended up being a deposit on a house. The point behind saying all that is not to like show off or anything, it's to just remind you, like, don't fall into the trap of being one of these people that sat overthinking every little detail of your music or every detail. Just try not to end up being one of these people that sits on loads of nearly finished music that probably was finished 3 versions ago, but sitting on this nearly finished music and this, I don't know how to put it out with a video, and you're holding yourself back by not showing the world. Like, if you have got it in you to create music every day and show the world every day, that's what you should be doing. But that's a lot to ask. But like, I've always been a fan of the Russ model, how he released a track every week or two, whatever it was, and that just built his core fan base, and then that allowed him to have the freedom. Regardless of how you feel about his music or anything, like, you can't deny that that worked. And I just think we're in an age where Drake can drop a project and it can be the biggest, most spoke about project in the world for 5 days. And then it's kind of starting to move on to the next thing or the next scandal or the next story or whatever. Like, people are scrolling that fast that, like, putting a year of your life into an EP and pouring your heart out and not really doing anything else is just crazy. It's crazy to me. But I think when you're at a certain part in your career, you feel like it's so important to you, and that's right to think. And this isn't all to say that you haven't got the most amazing project there ready to come out of the gates and take over the world straight away. It is possible, and who am I to say don't do that? That's not what I'm saying. But if you're at a point in your career, especially as a producer, and this applies to writers, but producers, I feel like producers can widen the scope a little bit more in where we can sort of attack from. But yeah, if you're at a point where you're wanting to really start to think about how you can turn yourself into a brand, or your music into a business, or the parts of the music business that you enjoy into a business, or into the thing that is really sustaining your life completely, you've got to find a way to be consistently putting something out there and showing the world. Because once your music's at the level where you're getting that feedback where it's generally good, just start getting it out. Don't start putting your first beat out, maybe. But even then, arguably do it. It's just there forever, which is the problem. And if it's terrible, well, it's not there if you delete it. Anyway, just break that cycle of overthinking every last detail of the mix, or always thinking it's not there and not there, and putting too much expectation on everything that you do, because it'll likely be the things that slip through the side that are the things that change your life, or that move you over, or like you'll be doing all this work and then this opportunity will come and you have to sort of like leave that there, and that was all a waste of time. That could have just all been portfolio ready and part of your discography. Like, I just think time waits for no one. People are more interested in themselves than in finding a new artist to follow, or finding a new producer that they're going to follow the career of intently. And there's just so much going on at the minute. Like, you've got to move that at that pace and find a way to like maybe be building your long-term projects there while you're juggling these things that you can turn around quicker, whether that's through posting more on social media and using that as your almost like consistent release platform. But I think once music exists out there, anything can happen with it. It can end up synced, it can end up in playlists, you can upload to like radio stations, submit the music that way, get into a system where you're just constantly dropping. And sometimes like just be okay with the fact that one track will perform less than that track, and then that one might jump up, then you might have two that are down there. You can't get wavered when two are down there, because you can still promote the first one if you want. Like, just don't hold yourself back by being focused on overproducing, overmixing, and overthinking everything, unless you've kind of got the facilities to do an amazing visual and the facilities to do an amazing mix. If you've got all that, then fair enough, but the important thing is that you start making them connections with whether it's people or professionals or other artists or other producers, and the only way that they're going to find you is if you move to the big city. If you already live in the big city, whatever, there's about 6 of them in the world or whatever that are the ones, but other than that, which is the majority of people probably online watching this and trying to figure it out, you can either move there, get amongst the hustle and hope that you can stand out being there, or you can take the focus online and do it from a place that might be more comfortable or more realistic for your actual lifestyle that you've got to live. Like, I've got 2 kids. I can't just go and live in LA now. Or I can't just go and live in London. I can, but it's just not the right thing. I believe it's possible for people to do that if they start thinking the right way. Another thing that I think doesn't get spoke about enough on these types of sort of videos is the benefit that you'll probably have forever for personal life, for business, for creative, for everything. Learn some basic video editing skills. If you've got a laptop and speakers and a microphone, if you've got the basics for your production stuff, and you was like, oh, I need a piece of equipment, what should I get? I would say get a decent camera that's going to get you decent quality video and visuals. And phones in general can do that now, obviously, but there is just something about a hands-on, dedicated camera where you can swap the lenses out and you can grow with it that will always make you able to like provide high quality content. And don't get me wrong, video editing is difficult when you're doing technical stuff and once you start getting really deep into it, but to do, if you make music, which is creating everything out of nothing and piecing it together in an arrangement, a video is literally you take a video and you arrange it. So editing a video is not that much different. To sidestep from doing music to learning the basic video editing skills is probably about 10 key commands and a bit of patience, and then it becomes easy. And I just think it's such a valuable skill not only to have anyway, because you could create a side hustle out of that anyway, which I do, and I'll go out and I'll do jobs for good money, but I can do that as and when I feel like it because it's a skill that I've learned to support my own music. And I just think that's a massively overlooked bit of advice that people get. I think business owners should get them. I think if you're starting a hair salon, you should buy one. I think if you're opening a shop, you should buy one and learn some, because then you can just be self-sufficient and keep yourself standing out. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is like streaming numbers and view counts and follower counts and how much pressure is put on that. I think there was definitely a time where that was a lot of the focus, and that felt like the thing that you had to get up, and I think for an artist there's still an element of that, but there's a lot of producers out there with a few thousand followers that have done huge things, and there's a lot of producers out there making a lot more money than the producers who look like they're popping and getting a lot of streams, because there's so much money to chase. The back end of streaming is unfair and unclear and just not enough. Even when you're in the millions, even when you're getting millions and millions of streams, like, that's only going to take you so far. And unless you're building a brand on the back of that and diversifying, I don't think that alone is enough for a majority of people to see as a goal that is attainable, because there's only so many spaces to be the biggest producer in the world, you know what I mean? So don't always make this your driving force, basically. Like, if you've got projects you want to release them, because if the music's good, if it's an instrumental album, don't let the idea that it won't get many streams or it might not get many likes put you off, because then there'll be the next one, then there'll be the next one, and you'll be building to that catalogue, and then it might be the 4th project you do that you get a bit of traction, but then you've got four like projects worth of material to then submit to have someone look at for an admin deal for a publisher, and maybe that publisher has got a good network in sync, or you might look at the albums you put out before and decide that they'd be better used now for like a production music album, or maybe that's just a personal thing that you want to do and a lot of your focus is on making loops and making sounds and trying to build a community of producers, or maybe you can navigate your way to getting into more sessions. More sessions doesn't mean more followers. More sessions means more work, and more sessions means more opportunity. But there's a lot of people doing huge things that none of us will ever hear of, that are amazingly talented, that are earning a full-time living from their music. Yet, if you were to go and seek them out on social media or on streaming, it might not look like they were doing enough to really be living the life that maybe they actually are living. But these are just some talking points that I often think about, and I have these conversations with other creatives that are like trying to break through to that next level, and some of the shared lessons are a bunch of stuff I've spoke about in this video. So don't take this as me preaching about what I think you should do and what you shouldn't do. This is just really to bring some more awareness, some other things to consider maybe that you haven't thought about yet because you haven't hit some of these milestones or stumbling blocks or problems that need solving. But fundamentally, the things that I would say is try not to limit yourself, try not to limit your opportunities by being ahead of yourself. Focus on being easy to work with, focus on delivering, and focus on being consistent with whatever it is that you do. And also remember those days where you're on a low, or maybe you're not feeling too creative, that it's okay to have the day off, or it's okay to spend the day being not creative but still being productive, and maybe seeking out some managers, seeking out some sync agencies. But getting out of the studio is totally fine. I'm guilty of forcing myself to work when on days when I shouldn't, and a day would have been way better spent doing the research and doing some of the other elements of what I do, but I want to make the music so much that I try and force something out, and you end up with something that you don't even like. So these are all just things to bear in mind. If you like this video or any of my other videos, then don't forget to like and subscribe, because it's going to help me grow. And the more that I can grow, the more that I can do with this channel, and the more that I can help people and try and bring people into some things that I'm doing. I'm really at the beginning of having these ideas. I'm trying to find consistency in this myself. So a lot of what I'm preaching is stuff that I'm practicing and what I'm actually trying to do right now as well. So yeah, see you in a bit.